We live in a time of interlocking crises. Frequently we're sort of given the impression that these crises are completely outside of human control and just happen to us and are caused by things external to anything that governments or people in power can deal with. And I'm very much one of those people who has the view that the causes of these various crises, war, climate catastrophe, cost of living, all comes from a broken system, and that the solutions are about changing that system. And when we look at that film, I thought it was a really good film, talking about the cost of living crisis. Immediately, straight away, one slight solution to that cost of living crisis, insulating homes, is also a significant solution to climate catastrophe. It's a step for both. And yet it's resisted by our politicians. And whilst it's been pointed out, absolutely right, that the amount of money compared to how much that would save is definitely a worthwhile investment, why is that such a difficult decision for our politicians? Unfortunately, because at the moment all investment decisions are about how do you make a quick buck, how do you make profit immediately, rather than long-term solutions for people. So out of the film, three things really come to my mind. One is the obvious one. People are seriously hurting. The cost of living crisis is seriously hurting people. You've got a broken society, and when you've got a situation where benefits and pay aren't keeping up with very significant levels of inflation, we're talking about a downturn in the cost in people's ability to survive that's bigger than anything we've seen in the post-war period. Really significant impoverishment of people, and that's obvious. My union, I'm a member of PCS Civil Service Union, did a survey of civil servants. Some civil servants are quite well paid, other civil servants are on the minimum wage. They found that 1 in 12 civil servants have relied on food banks. That's people in work. The nurses union, the RCN, did a similar kind of survey and found the same sort of thing. So we've got people in work in key industries, key parts of our society relying on food banks. So that's the first thing. People are seriously hurting because of their cost of living crisis. The second thing that comes to mind from that is that at the end of the film, the profits made by the energy companies, the idea that we've got these external factors causing these price rises, and the only solutions are that we all have to pay a cost, we all have to get worse off. It's simply not the case, is it? Because what you really see is the hoarding of profits at the top at a very significant level that could allay these kinds of problems. So the point was made obviously about the energy companies, the record profits, but there's also other companies, and there's a little bit here. The world's biggest food companies have paid out nearly 15 billion to shareholders as spiralling prices leave desperate people struggling to afford to eat. Nestle, Unilever, Associated British Foods, Mondelez and Archer Daniels Midlands Company have raked in 20 billion in profits in the space of a year. So, price rises for food are hiking up, but food companies are making record profits. You could easily resolve these things. You've got to tackle these people who are raking in profits. And then the third thing that comes from the film, in my mind, towards the end there, you had someone talking about how we can't allow them to atomise us as individuals. We have to come together collectively. And then we had someone saying, people are getting angry, they may have lost faith in politicians, but they're starting to strike, they're starting to protest. And I think that's what we need. We need to have a solution that people have to be fought for, I'm afraid, but a solution that says we don't actually accept record profits on the one hand and the impoverishment of a majority on the other hand, whilst the world is burning and the solutions to that are the same solutions as the cost of living crisis. Let's move away from a system that puts profits before people and planet, and let's fight for a much fairer world. And I think we do that through building those strikes and protests, Extinction Rebellion, school student strikes, and the worker strikes as well.
Okay. I'll come to you next. I mean, there was a clear example there of how the cost of living is affecting us, and particularly with the companies and things making so much money. From an environmental point of view, I mean, how do you take this?
Well, I completely agree with Keith that the solutions to the environmental crisis are also the solutions for solving the cost of living crisis. The two go hand in hand. That's the beauty of any kind of climate action, is that by reducing carbon emissions, you're automatically reducing the cost of living. The classic example is, as you mentioned, about insulation. The quickest and cheapest way of bringing people's energy bills down is to make sure all homes are insulated properly. The elderly lady in the film talked about that. She said all homes must be insulated. And the bizarre thing is, that's still not the case. The level of installations that are done is abysmally low. That's because of the lack of investment from central government. But the other message that came through from the film was that we look after our own. We have to look after our own. Whilst we're waiting, we're not powerless whilst we're waiting for central government to act. We can come together as communities. And one of the ways of mending our broken energy system is to promote or encourage the growth of community energy. I truly believe this is the moment for community energy to shine. We are blessed in Sussex with a range of brilliant community energy cooperatives. These are non-profit making organisations, largely run by volunteers, that have been doing fantastic work over the years to actually make energy much more affordable to the local people. Stuart mentioned Energise Sussex Coast, which is a brilliant example of a local community energy cooperative that does some good work already in Eastbourne. I'm very pleased to say that the Eastbourne Eco Action Network KIC, which I'm a part of, has just partnered up with Energise Sussex Coast, which has received several £100,000 of national lottery funding recently in order to massively scale up the amount of energy advice that can be given to Eastbourne residents to bring down their energy bills and to insulate their homes. And that will happen, the training for that will happen in February next year. So if anybody wants to help, if anybody wants to volunteer for that training, come and see me afterwards, because we're hoping to train up an army of volunteers to actually go out there to every part of Eastbourne to help Eastbourne residents to reduce their fuel bills. Because together we can do what we can. But there are lots of schemes out there. There are actually lots of government schemes out there for reducing, for insulated homes, for example. But they're complex. There are lots of them. New schemes come in, old schemes go out. So it's difficult for people to know where to go to get the grants or the help. But this is the whole point of the energy advice network that we're trying to set up, is so that we help people to actually find out where the grants are, whether they're eligible for them, how to apply for them. So that's what we're trying to do as a community locally, to actually really bear down on energy bills.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'll now move to Councillor Murray. I know you have the remit for planning. I don't know whether you want to comment particularly on the documentary we've seen, or whether you want to explain to us how perhaps Eastbourne are coping with their housing portfolio. I don't know, it's up to you, whichever you prefer.
There's so many subjects in here, isn't there? Within the sustainable package that we've got for Eastbourne, you know, I'm sort of touching the surface of all of them. The main points that I picked up on around the energy. So we've got the main providers like British Gas, Centrica, etc., for example, making £10 billion of profit in a quarter last year. So if you multiply that up, you get £40 billion profit in 1 year. There's only 24 million houses in this country. So if you divide that by 40 billion, each household is paying £1,475 into profits in the gas and the electric companies before they pay for their electric bills. at the moment, and that just shouldn't be happening. So this windfall tax really should be sort of taking more advantage of that sort of money. I'm in the construction trade myself. I've been working on retrofit projects for a number of years. One of the problems is that we've got a real shortage. It's a huge shortage of skilled people who could actually go out and do this in the industry. So if we had that £55 billion that we were talking about in the video and gave it to all of the companies in the country and said, right, go and retrofit every single house, we would still only be able to get 4% of the houses done, because we haven't got the skills out there to be able to do that over the next 10 years. So that's another problem that we're facing. We haven't got the skills out there. So locally, the colleges have teamed up. So we've had Hastings, Eastbourne, Brighton, Chichester and Worthing all team up to create a sort of centre of excellence around retrofitting, installing charge points on the road for new cars, being able to do the mechanics for for electric cars. And Eastbourne's doing retrofits and solar panels. So we're training those people up. We're offering short courses for the local people, local businesses, so that they can actually just upskill their local labour force. So then that sort of upskills them. They get more money. It's improving everybody's lives. That sort of thing. It's all happening along those sort of lines. With regards to housing, we've got the flood risk from the sea at the moment coming in a sort of, if we carry on at the moment, we're definitely going to have a sea rise level. But we've also got a flood risk from fluvial rain at the moment coming in from behind us, because Wealdon are building all on our boundaries. So they're looking at building another 4,000 or 5,000 houses in Helsham. If they build those houses and we do nothing about it, the sea levels on Pevensey, the water levels on Pevensey levels will rise by a metre. Which is absolutely ridiculous. So we need an investment of about £45 million on new pumps, one of which needs to be put on the seafront, because we get tidal lock with the water. So it can't pump itself out. So we've got to get it out further out to sea, so that we can sort of then pump it directly into the sea about sort of 3 miles out rather than on the seafront. So there's so many problems out there that we're sort of trying to address. Modal shift is where we need to be going. Advice on how we live now with the energy crisis, and how we can sort of make those energy savings whilst we're looking to try and get the retrofits done. The government is coming up with £15,000 grants that you can come up with, which you can apply for to be able to do some of those retrofits. If we look at the house that we're trying to retrofit, if you insulate the windows, the walls and the roof, that's about 80% of the cost, and you get about an 80% improvement, and that's quite a steep climb there. You get a lot of improvement in the house just doing that sort of first £15,000 investment in the house. Then you start adding in things like NVHR units and air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. And then that becomes much more expensive, but all you're doing is you're sort of trying to improve that last 20% of the house. So these small fixes are quite good. Just one last thing, I was talking to the E-Hive project. They have now created a thermal turbine. So it's instead of doing ground source heat pumps, you go down, which goes down to sort of about 50 or 60 metres. This goes down 5 or 6 kilometres. Takes 180 degrees heat out of the earth, pumps it up to the surface, with a steam turbine. That one steam turbine powers 30,000 houses. And he's got 2 of them down there, one for the E-Hive project and one for the local economy. He says he could roll that out by 2030 across the entire country and take us off grid.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you very much. Jill, I noticed that you've been taking copious notes of things. I'm going to leave it to you on the direction you want to go with it, because I have no idea where you want to be.
No, the thing about coming last is, of course, everybody said, and I agree with everything everybody said, obviously. Although a few things, so Andy is quite right that working together and coming together as a community is going to be really helpful. However, we shouldn't really be letting the government off the hook on that, because that film made me very, very angry. I'm sure it made you all very angry. I think a very clear message from the film was how as individuals people feel so helpless. And they should be expecting the government to put the structures in place, and with their big spending power, the government can do a lot. And it's very much, watching the film and the news, it always feels at the moment as if the government is working against us rather than for us. And so I think that was a clear message for me, is how badly that we have been let down, and how as individuals it seems like we're pretty helpless. But yes, we can work together in communities, but we still need the government to act for us. The sorts of things the government could be doing, and insulation and renewable energy, of course, are a big theme. But I think one of the biggest problems we have is inconsistency and short-term measures. So people have a lack of certainty, and I think the solar industry is a very good example of how that lack of certainty has really worked against us. A few years ago we were really making strides. We had payback schemes in place. We had loads of people being trained, and businesses, small businesses, large businesses, taking on solar, rolling it out across communities. But that just stopped. It came crashing down. The government removed grants and funding with no future plans. And it meant that the skills that we'd already had were just left, so the businesses had to stop. So plumbers and electricians that had moved into solar then went back to what they were doing before. So we were suddenly de-skilled. It's like we just went back 20 years. And it's taken a long time to come back from that. It's taken the war and the cost of living crisis for that to come back to the fore. So we're going back to the beginning again. We're trying to get the skills. So it's just the lack of grants, the lack of funding. And it's the same with retrofit. I think if we have, if the government was able to put more money in councils' ways, so that they've got more funding for social housing, and put in more schemes, then more people will get involved. And the more people that, the more providers of solar and retrofitting, the more skills there are, but also everything gets much cheaper. So if you've got more of it happening, it gets cheaper, and it's been going the wrong way for the last 12 years. So I think what we really need to see is more investment in training, and as Jim said, did you mention the new training hub?
Briefly.
Yeah, okay, so we have the new training hub at Hampton Park, which is a good step. But we do need more projects going on, just to keep prices down and to have more skills. So I think it's that coordination. That's what we should be expecting from our government. There's a lot of other things we should be expecting from the government, but it's just watching things going backwards over the last 12 years, and we just need that reverse.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Right, now we do have an opportunity for you to participate in this if you wish. You can either make a